Television is easy to take for granted because it is so familiar, but the core idea is extraordinary. Capture moving images and sound in one place, transmit them across distance, and recreate them almost instantly in another. That made television more than just another appliance. It became a communication system that could carry emotion, information, and spectacle into private homes at scale. The word itself can mean the medium or the physical set, and that distinction matters. A television set is hardware, but television as a medium is social infrastructure. It is where advertising campaigns are launched, where public narratives are shaped, where sports become national rituals, and where entertainment formats spread globally. Unlike audio-only radio, television combines voice, image, timing, and repetition. That combination gives it unusual persuasive force. When people watch the same images repeatedly, they do not only remember facts, they absorb tone, framing, and implied priorities. So from the beginning, television was not only about technological progress. It was about who gets attention, what stories become normal, and how shared reality is constructed in public life. The path to mainstream television was slow and technical long before it was commercial. In the 1920s, experimental systems proved that moving images could be transmitted, but quality was crude and unreliable. Engineers had to solve foundational problems, scanning images fast enough to create motion, synchronizing image and sound, stabilizing transmission, and building receivers that ordinary users could operate consistently. Those constraints kept early television in laboratories and demonstrations rather than living rooms. The real breakthrough was not a single invention but a chain of incremental improvements that made the entire pipeline practical. Once those improvements accumulated, consumer markets opened. After World War II, conditions aligned for rapid spread, industrial production expanded, electronics manufacturing improved, and public demand for new domestic media was high. Black and white television became mainstream first in countries like the United Kingdom and the United States, and ownership accelerated quickly. Televisions moved from luxury objects to household standards, then into businesses and institutions. What looked like sudden adoption was actually delayed momentum from decades of engineering groundwork finally reaching everyday usability. By the 1950s, television had become a central force in shaping public opinion. This happened because it synchronized attention. Large audiences consumed the same programs at similar times, creating common reference points across regions and social groups. News broadcasts could influence political perception not only through facts, but through visual framing, who appears confident, which scenes repeat, what emotional context surrounds a report. Advertising benefited from the same mechanism. Brands no longer relied only on static print messages, they could show products in use, connect them to aspiration, and repeat those associations at national scale. Entertainment also played a role in social normalization, presenting lifestyles, values, and roles that viewers compared to their own lives. Television did not fully control what people thought, but it strongly influenced what people talked about and what they considered important. That is a powerful filter. In media terms, television became an agenda-setting platform. In cultural terms, it became a shared stage where politics, commerce, and identity were performed repeatedly enough to feel like common sense. The move to color broadcasting in the mid-1960s added far more than visual novelty. Color expanded storytelling language. Producers could use palette to signal mood, realism, urgency, and identity. Sports looked more immediate, nature programming became more immersive, and advertisers gained stronger tools for product differentiation and emotional branding. But transitions in media technology are rarely instant. Broadcasters needed new equipment, distribution chains had to support compatible standards, and consumers had to justify replacing working black and white sets. For years, both formats coexisted, and adoption moved in waves rather than a clean switch. Still, color eventually reset audience expectations. Once viewers experienced richer visual realism, monochrome began to feel like a limitation rather than a neutral baseline. This pattern repeated later with HD and streaming, each upgrade first appears optional, then gradually becomes the new normal. The lesson is that television evolves through expectation shifts as much as technical innovation. When visual standards rise, content creators adapt, manufacturers adapt, and audiences stop accepting the previous standard. Another major shift came when viewers gained control over time. Traditional broadcasting is schedule-driven, programs air at fixed times, and audiences must adapt. Home media formats disrupted that model. Betamax, VHS, Laserdisc, video CD, DVD, Blu-ray, flash storage, and digital video recorders gradually made it normal to watch pre-recorded content on personal schedules. This was not just convenience, it rebalanced power between broadcaster and viewer. People could pause, replay, collect, and postpone programs, turning television from a one-way timetable into a personal library. That changed family routines, reduced dependence on live slots, and opened new markets in rentals, purchases, and archival collecting. It also trained audiences to expect access beyond first broadcast. Once that expectation existed, cloud libraries and video-on-demand services felt like a natural continuation. In other words, streaming did not appear out of nowhere. It was built on decades of behavioral conditioning created by physical media and recording devices. The form changed from tape and discs to servers and apps, but the core demand stayed the same: control over when and how to watch. Television's digital transition in the 2000s and 2010s was a foundational infrastructure upgrade. Analog systems had carried broadcasts for decades, but digital transmission improved efficiency and enabled cleaner integration with modern compression, storage, and distribution tools. At the same time, many markets moved from standard definition formats like 480i and 576i toward high-definition formats including 720p, 1080i, and 1080p. These format labels represented real changes in perceived detail and motion handling, especially as screen sizes increased. A larger screen makes low resolution more visible, so higher definition pipelines became increasingly important. Digital conversion also required coordinated shifts across regulators, broadcasters, equipment makers, and consumers. It was complex, but once deployed, digital systems offered scalability and compatibility advantages that analog could not match. More channels, better picture consistency in many use cases, and stronger alignment with computer network workflows all helped television merge with internet-era media logic. What users experienced as sharper images was actually the visible edge of a deeper transition from legacy signal chains to data-centric audiovisual systems. Display hardware evolved just as dramatically as transmission formats. Cathode ray tube televisions dominated for decades because they were mature, reliable, and widely available. Even in the 2000s, CRT sets still represented a large share of sales. But flat panel technologies gradually changed the equation. LCD, plasma, and later OLED offered thinner form factors, lower weight, improved energy profiles, and increasingly competitive image quality. As prices fell, flat screens became practical mainstream purchases, and by the early 2010s they decisively overtook CRT in many markets. This shift affected more than aesthetics. Larger screens became common in ordinary rooms, wall mounting changed interior layouts, and higher resolution content became more meaningful because displays could show detail more effectively. Industry roadmaps then accelerated legacy exits. Manufacturers discontinued older categories such as CRT, DLP rear projection, plasma, and fluorescent backlit LCD across the mid-2010s. LED backlit LCD and OLED became dominant directions. Hardware modernization and content modernization reinforced one another. Better screens increased demand for better sources, and better sources justified screen upgrades. Smart TVs completed a major phase change by turning television sets into connected software platforms. Once internet connectivity and app ecosystems were integrated directly into TVs, viewers no longer needed to rely exclusively on broadcast channels or external playback devices. Services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, iPlayer, and Hulu made on-demand catalogs central to viewing behavior. The core question shifted from what is on right now to what do I want to watch right now. That shift sounds simple but has deep consequences. Scheduling power weakens, library depth becomes a competitive advantage, and recommendation systems influence discovery. Smart TV interfaces also became strategic battlegrounds, because whoever controls the home screen controls visibility and traffic. By the late 2010s, smart TVs had become dominant because they reduced friction: one device, one remote, mixed access to live feeds and internet libraries. Yet this convenience introduced new complexity too, including app fragmentation and subscription overload. Even so, the trajectory is clear. Television did not vanish in the internet age. It absorbed internet behavior and remained the primary long-form screen in many households. To understand why television stayed resilient, it helps to look at distribution diversity. Early TV relied heavily on terrestrial broadcasting, where high-powered transmitters sent radio frequency signals over the air to household antennas and tuners. Cable systems added managed delivery through coaxial and later fiber networks, often expanding channel capacity and reliability. Satellite introduced broad geographic reach where terrestrial or cable coverage was limited. Internet delivery added yet another layer, distributing video as data packets across broadband connections. These methods differ in cost structure, coverage profile, latency characteristics, and control models, but they increasingly coexist rather than strictly replace one another. A single household might use live terrestrial or cable for events, plus streaming for series and films. That coexistence is central to modern TV. The medium is no longer tied to one transport mechanism. It is an adaptive ecosystem in which content can flow across multiple infrastructures while keeping a familiar user outcome: watchable moving image programming on a primary screen. Flexibility in delivery is one reason television has survived repeated disruption cycles. At the device level, a traditional television is more than a panel. It typically includes internal circuitry such as a tuner to receive and decode broadcast signals. A display without that receiving decoding capability is more accurately a video monitor, even if it looks similar externally. This distinction reveals television's original architecture. It was built as a receiver in a one-to-many broadcast system. In classic broadcasting, communication is mainly simplex, meaning transmission flows outward from broadcaster to audience without a direct return channel in the same path. Internet-connected viewing changed that by adding back-channel capability through broadband, enabling personalization, interaction, and behavioral analytics. But the one-to-many logic still matters, especially for live events and mass programming where synchronized reach remains valuable. Modern television therefore sits between two paradigms: legacy broadcast distribution and networked software ecosystems. Its durability comes from combining both. It can still deliver collective moments at national scale while also supporting individualized on-demand consumption. That hybrid identity is not a temporary transition, it is the defining structure of television now. Seen across a century, television's history is a sequence of control shifts. First, engineers controlled technical possibility: could moving image and sound travel reliably at all? Then broadcasters controlled schedules and mass attention. Next, consumers gained timing control through recordings and home libraries. Digital conversion increased system efficiency and quality control. Smart platforms then shifted discovery power towards software interfaces and recommendation engines. Through each phase, television changed form while preserving function, a central medium for shared visual communication. Predictions of its death missed this adaptive pattern. Television does not survive by resisting change, it survives by integrating change into familiar behavior. People still gather around major events, still follow serial storytelling, still use the largest home screen for immersive viewing, and still encounter advertising and cultural narratives through that channel. The technologies underneath have transformed radically, but the social role persists. The story of television is not replacement by something else. It is continuous reinvention of the same essential promise: bring the world, in motion and sound, into everyday life at scale. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.